All right. Can y'all see the presentation here?
Yes, we've got it. Thanks.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and get started. So thanks again for having me today. As Brad mentioned, I'm interim vice president right now. There's a lot of changes going on at DART on the leadership side. Many of you probably are aware our president, Gary Thomas, took early retirement last year, and a few other in our leadership group. So there's some interim positions going on, but hopefully soon we'll have a new CEO on board. I think there's a lot in the works for that. So exciting changes ahead for DART. So I've been with DART for more than 20 years now, and have been working on a lot of the different expansion projects throughout the region. Worked on the red line, the blue line, the green line, the orange line a little bit. And now my focus is on the D2 subway. So I'm going to focus on that today, but also wanted to bring you up to speed on some work we're doing on our long range system plan and a little bit on our DART Zoom bus network redesign. For those of you that don't know, we have two other projects under construction right now. You've probably heard of the Silver Line project, and it goes from Plano to DFW Airport through 7 cities. And that is under construction. It's a design build contract. It should be open in a couple years. And then the red and blue platform extensions is another project. And what that's doing is extending our train platforms at 28 of our stations on our original starter system. Those were built shorter than the rest of our lines. And so we're extending those so we can operate longer trains system-wide in the future. There is information on our website. There's a link down there, dart.org /growth, where you can find information on all of these. So I'll start and just kind of focus in on D2 subway a little bit. So for those of you that aren't real familiar with this, it's been in the works for a long time. Back in 1990, the city of Dallas and DART actually signed a interlocal agreement related to the light rail system, and included in that was some language to start planning for a subway when ridership warrants were met. So in 2007, we really started planning in earnest for this project. And a few years ago, a new program came about at the federal level called Core Capacity, and it's a funding program where you can get up to 50% of a grant for a project. This is a $1.7 billion project in our current year estimate. So it could be a significant grant to help advance the project. But what we've done is we've gone through a series of alignments. It's a complicated process because of downtown and the development that keeps happening. You have to kind of keep pace with that, but planning a project can take 10 to 15 years. So there's always things changing. But we've settled on this alignment right now. There's still a little bit of work to do, but basically it starts by Victory Station up by American Airlines Center up on the north part of the alignment. And then we have a station planned next to the Perot Museum of Nature and Science. And then we would dive down into a subway alignment right near Woodall Rogers Freeway, which is that first purple box that you see. And we would be subway running through the remainder of downtown until we get to 345 near the Deep Ellum area, and where we would come out of the ground and reconnect. So 3 new subway stations, and I'll walk you through some of the design so you can see some of the things that we're working on. The plan for D2 would be that we would actually shift our green and our orange line over to this new corridor. The red and blue would continue to operate as they do today. And what this allows us to do then is just balance our operations in downtown, split our lines, and be able to add more service into either of those corridors over time and sustain our system and the growth in the region. Right now, since all 4 lines operate on that one at-grade alignment through downtown, we're pretty much maxed out on the service that we can push through downtown at our 15-minute headways on each of those lines. So D2 is important to be able to continue to expand the light rail system and to grow service over time. There's the main reason we're doing it is for that capacity improvement. We're also doing it because it allows us some operational flexibility. I mean, as you know, if you've taken DART to the state fair or anything like that, we operate a lot of extra service on days like that. There's also been times when there's been a fire downtown or something in a building next to our alignment and we've had to shut down for several hours or potentially a day. So this gives us an opportunity to keep people moving through downtown and to have flexibility to add more service and new service patterns in the long term. As I mentioned, we're going through a federal process to get a significant grant under the FTA's Core Capacity Program. We have gotten medium-high ratings. They have a set of criteria that you submit for, and you get rated in order to move through their process. And so our last rating was in 2017, and the reason we haven't done it since then is because we had a different alignment back then, and we rated medium-high. We've refined our project as a subway project over the last few years, and we still believe we're going to rate medium high. So we're at the point right now where we're trying to work with the Federal Transit Administration to move from project development on that chart into engineering. And that allows us to bring some final designers on board and get a contractor on board and start to move the project forward. The City Council just passed a resolution, the Dallas City Council on March 24th, just a few weeks ago. It's taken a while to get to that point, but they did support going ahead and issuing our final environmental impact statement. That is on our website if you're interested in looking at that. It's a nearly 400-page document, but it has a lot of information about the project in it and all the design plans. They also supported us going ahead and submitting our project to work towards that funding grant. But there still are some concerns on the east end of the project near 345 and Deep Ellum, and we're going to continue to work with our agency partners on that. And the City Council is set to consider another resolution no later than March of next year. So again, lots of information on our website if you're interested, and I'll talk a little bit about some of those East End concerns as we go through it. One of the things that we have on our website is the urban design plans for the project. And so I'll just kind of walk you through so you can just see a little bit of the detail with the project. Through the Victory development, which is right here, American Airlines Center is just to the north of this map. Perot Museum of Nature and Science is where that letter B is. And you can see a new station right here. The orange shading that you see is street modifications that we'll do to rebuild some of the streets around the area. But when the Victory Park development was planned, this right-of-way that you see through here for our alignment was actually part of a swap of an old railroad corridor. And that is DART right-of-way through there. And Victory Park sort of developed around that, understanding that D2 would come in the future. So we do own that right-of-way. It's in the median of a street called Museum Way. So we're calling this the Museum Way station next to Perot. And then right south of Woodall Rogers is where we dive into a subway. And so there will be a tunnel portal right here. And there's also a big parking lot right there that we're sort of on the edge on. And one of the things that we've been doing as we try to integrate this project into downtown is work with some of the major property owners and developers to incorporate our project into their design. So this just gives you an example of the Field Street District development, which is planned just to the south of Woodall Rogers. It's sort of by the Dallas World Aquarium, if you know where that's at. And there's a big parking lot there right now. So what they've done is actually put their designs together, and you can see our tracks running here under the freeway and then going down into this portal. And they've designed around that to include a pedestrian plaza linking buildings on either side of our tracks. So those are the types of partnerships that we're looking for as we advance the project so that D2 fits nicely into the fabric of downtown. As we move further south into downtown, we have a big bus transfer center called the West Transfer Center in the West End area, right next to our existing station there. So the green that you see shaded here is Griffin Street. Basically north of Elm Street downtown. And this white triangle looks like a bomber airplane, but it's that eagle looking shape right there. That is our main head house. And a head house is basically a building where passengers can enter and then head down to the station below. We have a couple of smaller places to enter as well. when we started thinking about what does this look like, we've done some animations, and it's actually on our website. I'll provide a link to that. But imagine walking across the street at Griffin, and our existing rail line is over here. This would be our new head house building. It may not end up looking like that when all is said and done, but we've designed it to be bright, lots of natural light. This is an interior shot where you can enter it and then head through fare control and go down escalators to the platform. So we have a lot of good animations and plan drawings to show what that looks like. As we get further into downtown, you know, it's very, very developed, not a lot of parking lots in the center of downtown. And so what you're looking at right here and what you can see on this page in the middle of the page is Pegasus Plaza. And probably many of you are familiar with that park downtown. It's at the foot of Ackerd Street, which is right where the new AT&T Discovery District is. So there's a lot going on in this area. And our challenge here was to try to figure out how to build a subway station about 75 feet deep below Commerce Street and find places in this area where we could actually construct it and have access points to it. So working with the city, what we were able to do, and the Parks Department downtown in Dallas, was to use Pegasus Plaza, and the City Council has approved this as a temporary construction site. And we would basically take up the park, store a lot of the art that's there, dig down, and have an access point under Ackerd Street towards the platform. And then once we cover it all up and build our station, we would put the park back in a reimagined state. And we've had some stakeholder meetings with some of the original founders of the park and the artists to try to imagine what that might be. You know, a lot of people think a subway is you put a line underground and that's it, and it's easier than having a line at surface. Well, there's a lot that goes on underground, and this is just to give you a flavor of the levels at this station. You can see the tube under Commerce Street over here to the right of your screen, and that's where the train goes through, and that's where the platform is. Magnolia Hotel is at the center at the top of the map. We would have a new head house, an access point built on Pegasus Plaza. And then below Pegasus Plaza, you can see the escalators, the mezzanine level, taking people down to a cross passage under Ackerd Street. Like you're headed towards AT&T, you're headed towards the platform underground. So it's a very complicated station. And Pegasus Plaza really gives us a good opportunity to build down, get all that infrastructure in place, and then put the park back on top. And this is a view of the animation that we did looking towards the head house, and this is at the back of the Magnolia Hotel. Pegasus Plaza may not look exactly like this when we're all said and done. There's some of the stakeholder comments that we got were to try to make it a little bit more of a usable place. It's a beautiful fountain there right now and a lot of work, artwork, and there's probably ways to incorporate that to make it a little more usable for downtown events and more accessible from the street. So we'll be continuing to work with the City Parks Department on that. Moving further to the east, I don't know if many of you are familiar with the East Quarter development that's happening. That's kind of on the bottom right of the slide. There's Todd Development Interests is doing a lot of rehabilitation of historic buildings in that area, as well as some new high-rise buildings with apartments and office. And that'll be a new kind of entertainment spot for the city when it's all said and done. But our station is just between Pearl and Cesar Chavez. Again, a couple of access points here. This is a much shallower station, probably only about 35 feet deep, so it's a little simpler to build, but we're still underground at this point. And then where you see this sort of X here labeled A, that is a major intersection in downtown. And right after we cross under that intersection, you'll see a portal right here under the freeway. And that is where we start to rise back up out of the ground. Here's some images of the CBD East station from the street to kind of see what that head house would look like. It looks a little barren right now. I'm sure there'll be landscaping and things like that. But again, we're trying to put as much natural light into these places as we can, for not only for security purposes, but just to make people feel a little bit better. On the east side, and this is where we still have some issues to work out. Even though the project's been approved, there still is a desire to try to address some of the concerns of the Deep Ellum area, because there's a lot of growth happening over here, as well as, if you've been following, TxDOT has an I-345 feasibility study underway, and they haven't determined what their future option would be for 345, but there's a lot of discussion about either rebuilding it as an elevated facility, which wouldn't conflict with D2 as we have it designed. But there's also a lot of desire to possibly bury 345 as a depressed facility and put it underground. And when that happens, if that was to be like Central Expressway, for example, or Woodall Rogers, and you put that freeway down, you are in conflict then with where our portal location is. You'd have to go a little bit deeper than they'd like to go to get under it. It can be done. It's not necessarily desirable from TxDOT standpoint, but they've looked at different design options and it's feasible. It would just probably cost a little bit more, and there might need to be a drainage facility because I don't think they can gravity drain anymore. So as they're continuing to work on their study, we want to work with them a little bit more and see how we can optimize that interface. And then we have a connection over here to our existing green line. That's where our Deep Ellum station is right now, but we would relocate that just to the north near Live Oak Street. That's where the Latino Cultural Center is. There's some historic buildings, and there's some new development happening in that area as well. Down to the bottom is where the Epic development is. If you're familiar with the Epic and Deep Ellum, brand new development. It's just south of where our alignment would be. And Westdale is a developer for that, and they own this parcel where our portal is. We are hoping to work out something similar to the other portal on the other side of downtown and integrate that with a building over it. And we're continuing to work through that with them. But there's a lot of concerns from Deep Ellum still about this connection happening at grade. So we need to work a little bit more on what the urban design features would be, and how that would fit in. And then are there tweaks or refinements or modifications, things we should be looking at to make it work a little bit better for everybody in that area? We have had a lot of meetings on the project. Just in the last few years, we've had 150 meetings, probably more now, with stakeholders throughout the area. We have a lot of really good broad-based support for the project. As I mentioned, TxDOT says we work with their different options, but they're early in their feasibility study still, and they still want to work with us a little bit more on that. And then Deep Ellum Foundation just recently, late last summer, submitted a letter opposing that at-grade connection. So again, that's why we need to work through this East End evaluation, we're calling it, to see how can we better address their concerns and how can we better optimize interface with 345. So we'll be doing that over the next several months. It is a joint effort with the city of Dallas. The North Central Texas Council of Governments is very involved. TxDOT's involved in us. The city is leading the effort. Their council resolution was very clear on getting to the point where we all are in agreement on the path forward, and there would be a resolution no later than March of next year. And really what we want to do is just kind of look at, there's a lot going on that side of town. In addition to 345, there's various projects in the Deep Ellum area. Carpenter Park is under construction right now. And we just want to make sure we're not reconstructing multiple things at multiple times if projects are all on different schedules, and see how we really can best integrate it into that area. Concurrent with that effort, we're also working with FTA to get into that next phase of engineering that I mentioned. And again, we're looking for about 50% of our project costs to be shared with that grant. And one of the complicating factors is there's other projects we have going on, and if we don't get that core capacity grant by a certain date, we're not eligible anymore. So we have a very tight time frame, because a lot of people say, well, can't you just spend another 5 years working on this? And We could, but we would lose that core capacity grant and move over to another funding program that we're not sure we're eligible for with this project. So a lot still left to work out, but it's a really great project. I think it can position downtown for a lot of success in the future, and a strong downtown means a strong city overall, I think. Again, I mentioned the animation. So there's a short 6-minute video that's on our website, and it kind of takes you through as a rider coming into downtown and going to a couple of the stations. What would that experience be like? So encourage you to take a look at that if you get a chance. The next few slides, I just want to give you a brief update on a couple of other efforts that we're working on. We do a long range transit system plan every few years. We haven't, it's actually every 10 years or so, we do a major update to it. So it's time for us to do that. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and we kind of hit pause on it because a lot of people wanted to redesign the bus system, and that's a very critical component. So we're going to be integrating that DART Zoom bus plan that's underway right now into our long range plan. We do have some information on our website about this, and what we're focused on right now is really defining a set of goals and actions. It's basically a strategic guide for us in the future related to these 5 themes that you see listed there. So rider experience, what can we be doing differently to make it a better experience to use transit for all of our riders, whether they're current riders or future riders. Mobility and innovation. We do have a chief innovation officer on staff right now. He is very involved in our GoPass app and how we can continually integrate other providers into that. So it's like one-stop shopping and payment for getting around, whether it's DART or other providers in the area. Service and expansion will outline some of the bus corridor improvements that will come out of DART Zoom. There's an opportunity for bus rapid transit in several of the new corridors that we're focusing on. There probably won't be a lot of new rail expansion in this plan. Part of that really is dependent on D2 happening. If D2 is not in place, there's really not a lot of expansion that we can do. And there's a lot of focus right now from our board and our cities to really start to enhance the bus system now that we have this 93-mile light rail system in place. How do we leverage that the best we can, and then start infilling with some additional bus corridor improvements? And then land use and economic development. Transit-oriented development is always something we're focused on. It's a way to create those live work play spaces where people don't have to use their car and can rely on transit. There's a lot of coordination going on with cities right now relative to their land use plans, zoning, requests for proposals for TODs around our stations, and even parking changes to support transit. So all that fits in there. And then collaboration is important because we have to work with a multitude of stakeholders and other agencies and cities to make things happen, because a lot of the things like bus corridor improvements really are out of our control. It's public right of way. There's developers along the corridors, and zoning controls a lot of the land use, and that's all under city control from our 13 cities. A few slides on DART Zoom. If you're not familiar with that, this is a major effort to support service changes on the bus side by January of 22. There's been a lot of work going on in the last 2 years. We've hired a national consultant that's done a lot of these efforts throughout the country, and it really is starting from a clean slate. Like, if you didn't have a bus system, what would you do? Looking at what is on the ground right now and where people need to go, what type of service they need. The current draft plan is actually on our website, and I've got some links at the end of this, but it really is focused on, and our board kind of set forth some goals for our staff to focus on, do we want to focus on ridership and have a lot of routes that really have good frequency so people don't have to wait long? Or do we want to focus more on coverage, which means you might have a lot of routes throughout the service area, but they might not be as frequent, meaning you have to wait longer, and transfers are less convenient. So the whole plan is built around trying to focus on those high ridership corridor routes, and then supplementing it with what we call GoLink coverage, which is sort of an on-demand type of service similar to Uber and Lyft, where those areas that really have not that much demand for transit, how can you fill it in with these different types of new services? This is really hard to see, so I'm not going to go into it, but the proposed bus network is on our website. The focus is really, and what this shows is in purple are the bus routes that would be operating at every 20 minutes at noon on a regular weekday. And that's a big improvement from what we do today. A lot of our buses are really focused on the peak morning and the peak evening. But what we've been doing is doing more improvements midday. And we're seeing a good ridership jump with having better service just in the midday when for people that might not work regular shifts or that need to run errands or get to school or get to doctor's appointments. So there's a lot more emphasis on midday and weekend service in this new plan. I mentioned GoLink. You can book that through our GoPass app. There's also a phone number to call. We're partnering with Uber Pool in a lot of the zones. Actually, it says in all the GoLink zones now, and that's new. We've been adding them as a partner in a lot of these. And then we also have smaller vehicles that operate in these different zones to serve different areas. And that's good for trips within a zone or trips from a zone to a major transfer point to catch a light rail line or a major bus route. There's a lot of meetings going on right now. The timeline, as I mentioned, this started in 2019. It is proposed to be approved by our DART board in August of this year. There's a lot of public meetings going on right now. There will be a public hearing at our DART board meeting on June 8th. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments, and there may be some changes to the draft plan that's online based on the comments that we get. But there's a lot of work to do to implement this by January of 22. This is the web link for dartzoom.org. If you're interested in what might be happening in the greater East Dallas area, there are interactive maps. There's a survey. You can learn about each specific route and what's happening with that. So I'd encourage you to go look at that if you're interested in anything specific for your area. There is a meeting coming up next Monday, April 26th for North and Northeast Dallas. It's a virtual meeting. The links are on that dartzoom.org website, and you can just join virtually to hear a little bit about what's happening in the area. And here's some more links. Again, there's a lot of information. I think if you just go to dartzoom.org, you'll find everything you need. So that's all I have for today. I am happy to answer questions. And if you want, I can stop sharing my screen or keep it up here in case anyone wants to go back to a specific slide.
Let's keep it up in case we had specific questions that pop up. And I've had several come to me, and you've touched on a lot of them. But Kay, I want to start first by saying thank you. This was a wonderful presentation. You have knocked out actually several of the questions that I received already in these. Someone asking about potential lowering of 345, whether that was a consideration, which you touched on. I've had a chance to look at the virtual walkthrough animation on the website, and that is a very, very cool thing. I highly recommend anybody go to dart.org/D2 to check that out. So, yeah. One of the questions that I got is what's the average proposed depth, and then also the deepest for the D2 line?
So it varies, obviously. When we go into one of those tunnel portals, for example, we go from grade until the end of the tunnel portal is about 22 feet deep. Okay. And then we continue going down, and we have different construction methods that we have to do. We might have to do cut and cover. If the rock isn't deep enough right there, we have to actually kind of open the street up, build D2, cover it back up, and there might be some temporary decking. But that first subway station at Metro Center, I think, is about 60 feet deep. And when you look at other stations in our system, I think Mockingbird Station is about 45 to 50 feet deep. The City Place station is 120 feet deep.
Oh, wow.
It's very deep. But Metro Center is about 60, so it's a little deeper than Mockingbird Station. That Commerce Station is our deepest. I mentioned that's about 75 feet deep. So that is the lowest point of our alignment. And one of the reasons we wanted to be that deep there is, first, we don't want to open up Commerce Street if we don't have to, right?
Right.
AT&T's headquarters there's a lot of major stakeholders there, and the preference is stay down, mine under that, and only open up where you need to get access to the station. There's also a lot of utilities under Commerce Street.
Exactly.
Including some old water brick, and we just don't want to mess with those. And then when we get to the CBD East station, we're back to about 35 feet deep on the east end, and then slowly start rising to get back under 345 and back to grade. So
Got it.
75 feet. Long answer.
Okay.
That's the deep.
All right. No, that's perfect. And I just had a question pop up that is kind of along this line, and maybe this is too early to say, but is there any consideration for future expansion of the subway, assuming this goes well?
I think once this subway is in, we're good for a while. We're intending for this to be a 50 to 100-year project, right? And
Good.
Take our system into the future. We've always said maybe there will be a D3. So there could be someday.
Right,
I probably won't be around for it, but there's a lot of interest in, well, what about high-speed rail coming in? Or,
right.
There's opportunities. We do have lines down there already, but a lot of people say, well, maybe we need another line 50 years from now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I know that
never.
this is enough to try to bite off, at one time.
Right.
We're thinking about others. So we had another question that asked, will anything in President Biden's infrastructure plan be geared toward urban transportation or funds that could be used by DART to amplify its reach?
Yes, that's a great question. And one of the things that we've been tracking, and a few of us at DART are part of a capital investment grant working group, and it's agencies throughout the country, and we monitor what's going on from a federal level. And one of the things that they've been really trying to push is just more funding for transit through these discretionary grant programs. Right now, there are some limits in the law as to how much of a percentage you can ask for your total cost. And generally, they like you to stay under 50%. But, for highways, you often get a lot more than that. And so I think they're trying to level the playing field and actually have it be available for up to 80% for transit. And with that means allocating more funding, right, through the bill for some of these. And so a lot of those are under discussion. That could be a good thing for us, especially, depending on what grant program we're under. Core capacity, there is funding there available. It's not a very competitive program right now. There's another pot of money called New Starts, which is very competitive. There's lots of places throughout the country trying to get that. And if they boost that money up and make more money available, that would be good for us all around. So yeah, I think definitely there's a lot of opportunities there.
Sticking with the with D2 construction, once the first shovel of dirt is turned, as they say, once construction starts, what's the anticipated completion time?
So right now we have a working schedule that assumes everything goes perfectly over the next year.
Which it always does.
Yeah, right. And we're estimating probably it wouldn't open until the end of 2028. It's going to take several years for design and construction to happen. And, one of the things we're looking at is, can we do early right-of-way acquisition? Can we do early utility relocation and really set it up so that you can get in and get out? But we've got to get through this East End evaluation piece first,
right,
with the city, and get that subsequent approval. And then I think we'll be able to fine tune our schedule after that.
Okay, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Had some other questions relating to the bus service. What's the ideal space between bus stops, and how can DART partner with the city to improve sidewalks to cut down on the number of stops along the route? I remember from previous experience that some of the bus stop locations are dictated by sidewalks, contiguous sidewalks. So is there an ideal, as it relates to that ideal space if we had the sidewalks?
Well, so The ideal spacing, obviously you want to put stops where there's activity, right? So it varies by route. It might be a quarter, a half mile. It might be every few blocks, depending on what's there on that corridor. We've actually done quite a bit of bus stop consolidation over the last few years to try to reduce the number of stops. So you don't have to stop all the time. But what's interesting, it doesn't save that much time because you're not stopping at those stops that aren't used very much anyway.
That's fair.
So you have some natural places where you can get rid of those. The sidewalk issue, that's a challenge in all of our cities. And one of the things that we're looking at as part of our transit system plan, strategic guide, one of the goals under that rider experience theme is helping to leverage funds that are out there and work with our cities to improve sidewalks, especially to some of our major stops. And sidewalks generally, if it's around one of our stops, then we will spend money to improve that. But, what happens after that block, beyond that, and there's not something or it's in bad shape. So we're contemplating a new program. We would have to take it through our board of directors, but we have some other policies and programs related to street repair. And we kind of want to model something similar to that for sidewalks and be able to at least put some DART money into the mix if there are criteria that are met, that maybe we would use some of our funds to help leverage other grants or other funds through bond programs or the county or the federal government. So that's a new program that we're looking for because I think, most, if not all of our customers walk, right?
Right.
To get to where they need to go. So sidewalks are really important.
Last question I had, and if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to chime in, but are there any considerations for smaller rubber wheel trolley types in the popular areas? I think Fort Worth has a program over there where they have in the restaurant district, if you will.
Yeah.
Something similar to that. I know y'all have smaller vehicles, but they're not necessarily the trolley type.
Right.
Is there any consideration there?
So we've tried that over the years in downtown, for example. And we even had a D-Link route that was the downtown Dallas link, right? And it was branded. It was a pink bus with yellow dots on it, if you remember that. And it tried to hit a lot of places in downtown on kind of a circular route, and the city helped fund it, and downtown Dallas Inc. helped to fund it. And it just didn't do very well. It's, when you're competing against Ubers and Lyfts and walking, it's got to be really convenient. And so that is not an operation anymore. The one thing that the city of Dallas and even some of our other cities continue to be interested in is streetcar. And if you're familiar with the Dallas streetcar or the McKinney Avenue trolley that operate, the Dallas streetcar is actually owned by the city of Dallas. A lot of people don't know that. They think it's a DART system, but it's owned by the city. We have an interlocal agreement with the city to operate and maintain it for them. And we put in some money every year and they pay for the rest of it. But we did just a couple of years ago, the council, when they approved the D2 alignment, approved an alignment for a link through the core of downtown called the Central Link of the streetcar.
Okay.
And that would be something that would end, go from Union Station where it ends now through the middle of downtown, whether it's Main, Elm, Commerce, to be determined, could be Ross, there's a lot of different places you could go in downtown. But to go up and then turn and link up to the McKinney Avenue corridor or possibly continue east. There's some good corridors, whether it's Live Oak or Gaston or Main through Deep Ellum. So we're in the process of doing a streetcar master plan with our cities. And I think streetcars offers a little bit more than a rubber wheeled one because it puts some permanence on the ground. And I think just around the streetcar in Bishop Arts, I'm trying to remember the amount of development just in the last couple of years, 200 million or so, just around that extension. And that generates taxes, right, for the city. So I think there's continued interest in that as opposed to the rubber wheeled. I think the GoLink zones and the improved bus routes will handle that.
Excellent. Perfect. Kay, we really appreciate your time today, your expertise, and being willing to hop on and give us this great presentation.
Sure.
So
good. It's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation. Anytime.
Absolutely.